Hi, I'm Jen from That Mama Book Nook, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a little catch-up wrap-up on the books that I have read at the beginning of the year. I'm definitely a bit of a yapper about books. I really like to give both synopses and my thoughts about books to kind of give the full picture about whether it might be a book for you and just so my thoughts about them make sense. So I'm planning to do kind of split up into a January-February wrap-up this month, and then next month I will do a March-April wrap-up, and then hopefully after that I will be all caught up and I will then be able to just continue on with monthly wrap-ups. So today's might be a little bit longer because it is 2 months in one video, but I will try to go as quick as I can. So that is the plan anyway. So here are the books that I read in January and February of this year. In January, I finished 10 books, and I hate to start out with a bummer, but the first book that I finished was not really the book for me. I read Booked for Murder by P.J. Nelson, and I only gave this one 2.5 out of 5 stars. I actually think that is one of my lowest rated books this year so far, if not the lowest rated books. If you aren't used to my ratings, I give a lot of 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and even a fair amount of 5-star reads. I very rarely rate books 2 or 2.5. I've never given any books anywhere in the 1 range, nor have I ever DNF'd a book. So it kind of says something when I give a book that low of a rating that, yeah, just really probably wasn't for me. I've been avoiding writing my full review on like Goodreads and Instagram for this one. So, and I did finish this like way back in the beginning of January, so I'm a little bit rusty on this one, bear with me. So this is about Madeline Brimley, who left her small town in Georgia many years ago to go to college to pursue stage acting. She was not super successful, and then she got word that her beloved, eccentric Aunt Rose has passed away and left her Aunt Rose's equally eccentric bookstore housed in an old Victorian mansion in the small town of Enigma. When she arrives, Madeline is faced with threats that the bookstore will be burned down if she doesn't leave town immediately, and the gazebo in the backyard is actually burned. She ignores the threats, but then there's actually another fire and a young girl is murdered at her store. Madeline doesn't have a lot of faith in the small town police, so she sets off with one of Aunt Rose's best friends and the local priest to investigate on their own. Unfortunately, I really couldn't connect with any of the characters in this book. Madeline herself has no sense of self-preservation. She gets herself in a lot of situations where, whoops, probably shouldn't have said that or done that, and it got kind of old really fast. Everyone in the town pretty much has a childish temper. You think of small town as like a close-knit community and everyone trying to help everyone else. No one had any compassion for anyone else, and it was honestly a lot darker than I was expecting. Also, with a few exceptions, looking at you, Vera Wong, I personally don't enjoy books where the characters decide that they should go sleuthing themselves. Just please stop interfering with the investigation. I don't care how small the town seems or how incompetent the local detectives are. You characters don't have any idea what you're doing. The writing overall, though, was fine, and I did enjoy the bookstore setting, and there was an awesome bookstore cat, which I would have loved to see more of. But yeah, it was just kind of a predictable and not so cozy mystery. Then I also read Anywen by Beth Duke. week, I gave this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. This was a sci-fi historical fiction genre blend. Basie is born in the year 2069 on the centennial of the Woodstock Music and Art Fair. That year, a wave of nostalgia sweeps through their community, kind of reviving the whole peace, love, flower power in fashion, music, and culture. So Basie is raised on the music of Joan Baez, Santana, and other Woodstock icons. Fast forward to the year 2101, and Basie has the opportunity to time travel. She, of course, jumps at the chance and obviously picks going back to Woodstock, where she will also have the opportunity to meet her great-great-great-grandmother, Kelly Adams. Kelly is a very career-focused woman who is working on artificial intelligence, which will someday shape the foundations of the utopian world that Basie calls home. The moment that Basie arrives, the differences between 2101 and 1969 are staggering. The time travel trip definitely has some ups and downs that are unexpected, one of them being falling in love. The premise of this book was fascinating. I feel like I could have read an entire book just on the year 2101. They have these things called Nourish Cubes that have replaced food and are really everything that your body needs as far as nourishment. It has cured disease. It also seems to control your hormones. Therefore, with no more disease, lifespan is significantly longer. Also, intelligence has expanded, and obviously technology has come a long way since time travel is now possible. Unfortunately for me, we don't really spend a lot of time in 2101. Most of the book takes place in 1969, though reading about that time period was interesting too. The music references were fun, even if it was before my time. I still picked up on a lot of the ones that I heard growing up with my parents. I don't know, obviously, how much drugs were actually at Woodstock. You definitely hear the slogan like drug, sex, and rock and roll from that time period, so they definitely could have been pretty prevalent, but I didn't really enjoy all the drug references that were kind of plastered throughout. I feel like there was still a lot more to Woodstock than just drugs. And then again, with this book, unfortunately, I just couldn't connect with the characters very well. And again, similar to the previous book, they were just all so nasty to each other. It just seemed unnecessary. And I struggled with the dialogue a little bit too. And then lastly, there was a very odd love triangle in this book that I did not enjoy. I don't enjoy love triangles in general, but this one was kind of extra weird, so that didn't really vibe. But I still gave it 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed the plot, and I thought the ideas were just really creative from this author. Then in January, I read The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Finally, a 4-star out of 5-star rating. Elwood Curtis is the studious kind. He's very kind, considerate, and has a lot of moral courage, always standing up for what he believes is right and just. He has an opportunity to enroll in a local black college when a very innocent mistake destroys that future and sends him to an all-boys reform school, the Nickel Academy. The Nickel Academy turns out to be a place of horrors and abuse and honestly a type of modern-day slavery. Elwood could try to keep his head down and try to get out early for good behavior, but the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. ring very loud and true in his head, and he can't help himself but to act. His fellow inmate and friend Turner is much more cynical, and both boys end up making decisions at the Technical Academy that changed their lives forever. This is a fictional story, but it is based on a real reform school, the Dozier School in Florida, that only closed in 2011. And it really did destroy thousands of lives. Unmarked graves were found during and after its closing. This book was a difficult but powerful read. It really brings to light racism in not only America's past, but America's present as well. The book takes place during the 1960s, but the fact that this school didn't close until 2011 is horrifying. Colson Whitehead's writing was lacking emotion, but I do think that this was done intentionally. It made it more uncomfortable to read. Again, I think a purposeful decision. He wanted people to be uncomfortable reading this book, and it also made it so the abuse was not just sensationalized. Unfortunately, it did hurt my connection with the characters just a tiny bit. I really wanted to get to know the boys on a deeper level. That ending, though, will sit with me for a long time. This has been made into a film that either is still currently in theaters or just recently out of theaters, and the film is in first-person point of view, which I think is so interesting. I definitely want to check it out. The trailer looks incredible. Next up in January was Faking Ties by Alexis Gorgon, and I gave this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was a great book, but I also think that the rating might even be a tiny bit elevated because I finally got that connection with the characters specifically that I was missing in the first 3 books that I had read this year. Elodie posts herself on TikTok singing famous pop star Stella Wild's songs in kind of a new way, and the internet goes bananas thinking that she is actually Stella Wild. Stella herself then reaches out to Elodie and asks her to impersonate her for a little while she recovers from some medical issues. The money is too good for Elodie to pass up. They test it out first at a charity gala. Sure enough, everyone does indeed think Elodie is actually Stella. And she catches the eye at this gala of bad boy pro football player Hunter Holt. The paparazzi, of course, have a field day with this. Hunter approaches Elodie, who he thinks is Stella, about possibly some sort of fake dating relationship to rehab his image, and the real Stella insists that Elodie go along with it. So the deal is on. Now, not only is Elodie pretending to be Stella, but Elodie impersonating Stella is fake dating Hunter Holt. Elodie is very anxious about pulling all of this off, and also about the real feelings that she's developing. This book was so fun. Elodie and Hunter had great banter from the start. Hunter definitely fell first, and he does all those really cute things that male main characters do in books that I love. Remembering her favorite dessert and sending it to her, carrying text messages while they are apart, bringing flowers to her performances, and more. And Elodie was really helpful for Hunter as well, making sure that he formed connections with his teammates, something that he had been struggling with. I loved the secret identity premise, and the plot overall was really entertaining. This is the first book in the series, but the next couples are already being hinted at, and I can't wait for their stories too. Next up was Steal My Heart by Laura Pavlov. I usually read several Laura Pavlov books a year. They are definitely comfort reads for me. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. We have shifted from Magnolia Falls, which was last year's series, and now we are in Rosewood River. This is following Emerson Chadwick, who was one of the characters in last year's series, her twin brother Easton Chadwick, who is a big-time lawyer. Henley Holloway is his boss's daughter, and now he has been tasked with mentoring her. Henley has top LSAT scores, graduated from Harvard Law, and really holds her own. Also, she's a great pickleball player. There is a mutual attraction between the two, but workplace romances are definitely tricky. And Easton has a very emotional and tragic past from his last true relationship, and he's just not sure if he's ready to open his heart again. As I said, even though this is a new series, it is kind of more of a spin-off series, so it is like coming back to my comfort reads again. I wasn't sure how I was going going to feel not being with my Magnolia Falls characters that would really pull me in? Would it be too similar? Would it be too different? But I ended up really enjoying it. I actually don't think I have read many workplace romances, so that was kind of fun. The need to keep it kind of secretive and quiet until they know for sure it's serious leads to a lot of fun flirting. I loved Henley's character the most. I love a woman who, despite kind of being handed everything in life, still finds a way to pave her own way and not be spoiled and really hold her own. And of course, I did love the couple cameos from the Magnolia Falls series of those characters that I know and love. They will definitely always hold a special place for me. Finally, we come to my first 5-star read of the year, and it was actually my favorite read in January overall, and that was Unromance by Erin Connor. Sawyer Green is a best-selling romance author and has even had one of her books turn into a major motion picture. However, she has run into a bit of writer's block after her girlfriend broke up with her and left her heartbroken. When she gets stuck in an elevator with a charming man, they decide to have a one-night stand. The only problem is they end up bumping into each other. Mason West is actually a famous actor, but when Sawyer doesn't immediately recognize him, he decides to enjoy the anonymity for the night. He does come clean about his job when they run into each other the next time, and about his situation where the tabloids have basically been all over him for falling too quickly in love with his co-stars and subsequently getting dumped. They then decide that they will help each other out. They will do all the cutesy rom-com things to try to help cure Sawyer's writer's block and ruin all of them to help Mason get over this cutesy love infatuation he has. I loved this book. Mason and Sawyer going through all the different tropes and trying to ruin romance was honestly hilarious and adorable. They joked and bantered throughout the whole book and really became friends first despite their one-night stand, which I loved. Mason was probably my favorite character in this one. He just treated Sawyer so well, and I love a guy who is not afraid of his emotions. I always love a good side character as well, and both Mason and Sawyer's best friends were great, super funny, supportive, and hilarious. My favorite combination. The book is actually set over the holidays, but I feel like it was fairly subtle, so I wouldn't hesitate to pick this one up at any point in the year. Definitely a perfect winter romance read, but again, anytime I recommend. Then I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I actually went live on Instagram with some of my friends to chat about this book, which was really fun. This is about Sarah Spain, who has some strange powers that she keeps secret. She is also very busy in her area of the kingdom just trying to survive by pickpocketing and stealing from the Undying Queen's reservoirs. Sarys eventually gets caught trying to save her brother and inadvertently ends up opening, or really reopening, a gateway between realms and then is accidentally transported to a land of ice and snow and fae, which she always had thought was a myth. She also lands herself in the middle of a centuries-long conflict. With her, she brings back Kingfisher, who is a fae warrior, and then accidentally binds herself to him. But Kingfisher has his own secrets. Turns out that Sarys's strange powers are actually because she is an alchemist, and he wants to use her powers to protect his people. And Sarys really just wants to get back home to her brother. I enjoyed this book, and I enjoyed chatting about it. This is actually the first book that I fully annotated, which was also really fun. I I thought the alchemy magic was so cool. Since I'm relatively new to the fantasy, romantasy genre, I asked my friends that I was chatting with about this book if that was a common magic system in fantasy books, and they all said no. I mean, it's certainly not the only one, but it's not a super common one, so that was really neat. I thought the world building was great. I thought the book had a lot of great side characters, which, as I just talked about, I also love to see. The only thing I really wasn't a huge fan of was Kingfisher, or Fisher if the name bothers you a lot, as it did for many, it seems. Two things I really do not like to see in male main characters, or really any main characters, but I just find that it tends to be more prevalent with male main characters. Someone who is so overprotective and controlling that they completely take away free will. Nope. I love a protective guy, but they also have to know when it's not your job, especially when you have a strong, independent woman like Cerys who can take care of herself, thank you. And two, when he makes a very one-sided decision about the relationship that is supposedly in her best interest, that really should have been discussed as a couple. I hate that. But I literally loved everything else about this book, so I still gave it a very generous 4.5 out of 5 stars. For my Goodreads Best Books Ever challenge, I finally got to read The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. This is categorized as a children's book, which I don't really agree with. Certainly children can read it, but a lot will go over their heads, and the writing is very mature. I really feel like this is more of an adult novella, but I will get to that. I just did briefly want to mention that I don't rate and review every children's book that I read. I have 3 children. I read to them pretty much every day, and my books read ratio would be ridiculous if I did that. But if I read a children's book for myself, for a challenge, or maybe if it was something that I read middle grade and above, I would consider as well. But I did just want to explain why I was reading and reviewing this one. Anyway, The Little Prince is about a pilot who is stranded in the desert, and one day he awakens and sees a little boy, and the little boy asks him to draw him a sheep. And it takes a while for the pilot to really understand what he is asking for in this drawing, but eventually he goes on to be taught some very important life lessons from this little boy about what is really important in life. This book is considered a classic. I'm pretty sure I read it in French, which is its original language, in high school, I think. I will say I do think it's better in French. That being said, I don't think I could read or understand French anymore, unfortunately, besides like a few words here and there. So that's why I had to read it in English this time. I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars. As I said, I do think that this is really an adult novella in my opinion. The language is very mature and the writing is very formal. I did read it with my children. Since I had to read it, I asked them if they wanted to read it with me. They always want to read the books that I'm reading, and obviously most of them they cannot. And I will say my younger 2 lost interest very quickly. My older one did stick it out and I think got the general gist of it. And as much of the story talks about how adults can't really understand children's experiences, I think to some extent the same can be said for the reverse. A lot of the symbolism is going to be missed by a child because they haven't been an adult who used to be a child. That being said, I do love the message in this book. Life is short and adults do get caught up in these things that you could argue are fairly meaningless. That being said, I did find myself getting a little bit defensive of adults and how much pressure is put on us and how it's not quite that simple to set say that we stress over things that aren't important in the grand scheme of life. But ultimately, a book that makes me feel that strongly really says something about the book, especially one this short. The story was moving and tragic and thought-provoking, and I really was happy to have the opportunity to read it again. Then I read P.S. I Hate You by Lauren Connolly. I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars. Maddie Sanderson's brother Josh died from cancer at the age of only 29 years old. During the reading of the will, Josh has stipulated that he wants Maddie to split up his ashes and deliver them to various locations across the United States that he never got the chance to visit. He was a really adventurous guy. The only stipulation being that she needs to do it with his best friend, Dominic Perry, a man who, yes, was Josh's best friend, but also broke Maddie's heart. Maddie begrudgingly decides to agree to it, and they start a very emotional farewell road trip over thousands of miles, exploring new places and revisiting their complicated history along the way. After a snowstorm leads to a one-bed situation, Maddie wonders if Josh is actually playing matchmaker from beyond the grave. As I said, this one was 5 out of 5 stars for me. I don't know if I have ever cried this early in a book as I did with this one, just honestly like a few pages in and then frequently continuing throughout. Grief is so complicated and it really is a journey, which is perfect that it was paired with this road trip between Maddie and Dom and also Josh. Sibling grief is unfortunately something that I know a lot about and have personal experience with, and I thought that the author handled this really well. Maddie didn't always act the way everyone expected her to, and I really believe that grief has no rules, nor does the healing process. And to top it off, Maddie didn't have the support system, especially in the beginning of the book, which is really tough. P.S. I Love You, the film, is one of my absolute favorite movies. Probably my number one top movie, actually, if I'm being honest. So I loved the connections to the movie, which added a little bit of extra love for this book for me. And then ultimately this is a romance. The romance was great. The banter was great. There was silliness, there was lightness, there was deep emotions. I highly recommend. Then the last book that I read in January was Guild by Raven Kennedy. This book is the first book in the Plated Prisoner series. This is about Oren, who was abused and trafficked as a child, grew up very poor until she was saved by King Midas. She is now considered to be King Midas's favored because, like the original fairy tale of King Midas can turn things to gold, and she has been gold touched by him. He offers her safety, but he also keeps her in a cage. She also has these mysterious ribbons that come out of her spine that kind of can act like extra arms. It's very unique. Anyway, she's living her life as his favored, but then war comes to the kingdom and deals are struck and betrayals happen and lots of other stuff happen. I think I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This book is dark, so keep that in mind. This is a dark fantasy romance. But it was also kind of like watching awful news and not being able to look away. And I don't mean that the writing was awful or anything like that, otherwise I obviously wouldn't have rated it 4 stars. But the things that happen in this book, triggers all around. Check your triggers always. Lots of awful treatment and violence against women. Parts were very hard to read and the characters weren't super likable. But on the other side of the spectrum, I found this book entertaining and addictive and pretty interesting. Book 1 gets a lot of mixed reviews, but I have heard that books 2 and 3 are excellent. And then I think there's even a few more after that. So I am excited to continue with this series. Finally, we're on to February books, and I read 9 books in February, which, considering that February is a slightly shorter month than January, that kind of tracks for my pacing. The first book that I finished in February was Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. This follows Donice Fontaine, who has just put her college dreams on hold to stay home and go to a more local college to help take care of her fragile mother and family after tragedy has struck. A little background about Donice: she is biracial and she is also an unenrolled tribal member. By staying home and going to a more local college, she does get to meet Jamie, who is a charming new recruit on her younger brother's hockey team. Then Donice witnesses a shocking murder and she is thrust into this investigation and even agrees to go undercover. But the deceptions and deaths keep piling up and they are getting closer to home. This book is a young adult YA book, which I generally actually don't have a problem reading YA, even though I'm definitely not the target demographic. I just have a hard time with some of the ones set during present day. We're not talking about like the fantasy books, YA fantasy books or anything like that, but like the present day contemporaries, they tend to be really unrealistic. Like this is Pretty Little Liars type stuff. Entertaining, yes, but also come on. The romance in it was also not believable and kind of cringy, to be honest. And unfortunately, this seems to be a theme for January and February. I didn't love all the characters, but now that I've got that out of the way, I did love learning about the life and the traditions and the cultures of the Ojibwe tribe. The culture aspects in this book really were fantastic, and the scenery of Michigan and Sugar Island were also described so well. The author is a very talented writer for sure. And again, it was entertaining. It is like a fairly thick book, but it reads very, very quickly, as many YAs do, so I think that's a testament to it, and I definitely do plan to pick up the next book. Then I read The Favorites by Lane Fargo, 5 out of 5 stars. This is about Katarina Shaw and Heath Rocha, who are childhood sweethearts and champion ice dancers. Neither of them had a great upbringing, but they are quite the duo on and off the ice. Their relationship is a roller coaster. Then a shocking incident at the Olympic Games brings their partnership to a sudden end. Now the 10-year anniversary of their final skate together is coming up, and there is an unauthorized documentary that is being filmed that is reigniting the public's obsession of the two of them, and it claims to uncover the real story through interviews with their closest friends and rivals. Kat doesn't really want anything to do with it, but she also does not like the idea of someone else telling her story, so she decides to tell it all. Loved this one. So much drama, but it was so good. The characters are messy and toxic, but they are also complicated and real. That competitive, cutthroat world of ice dancing is displayed right on the pages. The roller coaster of emotions in this book made me feel all the feels, and I couldn't stop reading it. It was also done in a documentary style for parts of it, and I loved the mixed media aspect. I do tend to enjoy books that have that type of thing, whether it's like a podcast, interviews, letters, things like that. I really enjoy that in books. I've heard this book compared to Daisy Jones and the Six and a contemporary Wuthering Heights, and honestly sold. Then I read an advanced reader copy of Jennifer Milliken's first book in her new series that is loosely based on The Princess Bride, and the first book is called Pen. I'm a huge Jennifer Milliken fan. This one was still excellent, and I gave it another 5 stars. The entire town of Olive Township is waiting for the day when Daisy St. James says I do to the town golden boy Duke, including Daisy's terminally ill mother. Except Daisy's not in love, but she doesn't really care because she doesn't believe in love anyway. And don't worry about Duke, this is very much a mutual transactional relationship. But then a mysterious stranger named Peter comes to town town with a Navy SEAL tattoo that's surrounded by daisies. He feels very familiar to Daisy too. Then one day he says something to Daisy that only someone named Penn from her past would know. Penn Bellamy is back in Olive Township to get his late mother's estate in order, grab a sandwich, and leave again. He ends up speaking to Daisy and getting really involved with her life that he had not planned to do. When Daisy learns that Peter and Penn are the same person, and Penn learns that Daisy's engagement is just for show, the emotions take off. As I mentioned, this is the first book in this series. It's going to be a 4-book series based on The Princess Bride, and I loved it. I loved that they were still pining for each other after so many years, but because Penn had left so long ago that Daisy did not recognize him at first out of context. The hidden identity piece was so fun. I loved the characters in this one. Daisy was so relatable under so much pressure to make everyone happy, and Penn was so lovable, so caring and sweet even when he was hiding his identity in that grumpy way that romance readers love. Jennifer Milliken knows how to write banter and chemistry, and this did not disappoint. I haven't seen The Princess Bride in so long, but I was still able to pick up on a few of the connections, which was fun, but you definitely don't need to have seen The Princess Bride to still enjoy this book. I think if you are a huge Princess Bride fan, you will just really enjoy those Easter egg moments. All of Jennifer Milliken's books are so good. They're all really unique and different and emotional in their own ways. I'm really excited for Hugo's book, which is the second book that comes out this fall. Then I finally finished Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the highly anticipated third book in the Empyrean series. The synopsis is vague enough that I feel comfortable sharing it without it really revealing any spoilers if you haven't read the first or second book and plan to. After nearly 18 months at Basgiath War College, Violet Sorrengail knows there are no more time for lessons, no more time for uncertainty, because the battle has truly begun, and with enemies closing in from outside their walls and within their ranks, it's impossible to know who to trust. Now, Violet must journey beyond the failing Orician wards to seek allies from unfamiliar lands to stand with Navarre. The trip will test every bit of her wit, strength, and luck, but she will do anything to protect what she loves, her dragons, her family, her home, and him. They need an army, they need power, they need magic, and they need the one thing that only Violet can find, the truth. But a storm is coming, and not everyone can survive its wrath. I did not binge read this book like many of my friends did. I read it slowly, I savored it, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I didn't reread Fourth Wing or Iron Flame beforehand. And honestly, I didn't actually have that much trouble following along. There were certainly some characters that I was like, who are you again? But honestly, I chatted with my friends who did reread it and they felt the same way. So I don't know that it would have really helped me that much. I thought this book answered a lot of questions, but it also provided that many more, which is not unexpected given that we still have 2 more books in this series. I love the side characters. I love Xaden and Violet. I really didn't mind Iron Flame. I think that the issues that people did have with it, though, are resolved in Onyx Storm. So I think this book redeemed the series for a lot of people who didn't enjoy that one. I'm not going to go into any spoilers for Onyx Storm, so that's all I'm going to say about this book. I did want to say that Fourth Wing is the book that I give a lot of credit to for reigniting my love for reading and introduced me to Bookstagram and introduced me to fantasy and romantasy, which obviously opened up a whole world of books for me. So this series in general has a special place in my heart. Then I read Follow Me to Africa by Penny Ha. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is a dual timeline historical fiction following Mary Leakey in the 1930s 1980s as she starts her dream career as an archaeologist. She has started to get in with some well-known people in the field as an illustrated for their archaeology books, and she catches the eye of Louis Leakey, who is a well-known paleoanthropologist. They fall in love despite him being married. Mary eventually follows him to Africa, to the Olduvai Gorge, which she also falls in love with, and the work she does there. She really ends up making a name for herself. Then in 1983, we meet 17-year-old Grace Clark, who has just lost her mother and accompanies her estranged father to an archaeological dig at the Olduvai Gorge. And she gets to meet none other than now 70-year-old Mary Leakey. Mary and Grace form a unique bond, especially around their love for animals. When Lisa, an injured human-raised cheetah, appears at camp, Mary and Grace work together to save her. This book is actually a partially true story because Mary Leakey was a real paleoanthropologist, and many of the details, especially from the earlier timeline, were facts taken from her real life and career and marriage. I immediately wanted to go do my own little research on her life and her work and found it fascinating. During her time working, she actually discovered 15 new species of animals and even one new genus. How cool is that? I loved the dual timeline. I think Grace's timeline was my favorite, mostly because I loved Lisa the cheetah so much and just seeing Africa through this 17-year-old's eyes. But Mary's backstory was definitely important too. Learning about the different animals was so interesting, especially as a fellow animal lover. I learned what a serval cat was, about how wildebeest and zebras are buddies, and more. And the way that Mary and Grace came together to help Lisa after starting out being so skeptical of each other was really beautiful to see. Mary was a super eye-opening role model for Grace. Overall, such a enjoyable book that honestly made me want to learn more about paleoanthropology. Then I had a quick read of Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikatsu Kawaguchi. I rated this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. In a small back alley in Tokyo, there is a cafe that has been serving carefully brewed coffee for over 100 years. But this coffee shop also lets its customers have a very unique experience. It lets them time travel. In this book, we meet 4 visitors. One who wants to go back in time to confront the man who left her. One who wants to receive a letter from her husband who in the present day is suffering from Alzheimer's and doesn't really remember who she is anymore. One who wants to see her sister one last time, and one who wants a chance to meet her daughter that she never gets to meet. We also get to meet the other characters who work at the cafe. There are some rules to the time travel. You have to sit in a specific seat, you can't leave the cafe, and you must return to the present before the cup of coffee gets cold. This book was so sweet, it was heartwarming, the concept was interesting. I feel like there was definitely some plot holes in the magic system that had me questioning things a little bit, and I wish more was explained about it. Also, while it was a very short book, it was broken up into one chapter per character story, so each chapter did feel like it dragged a bit, unfortunately. Some very sweet stories though. I will probably continue on with this series eventually, just not rushing into it. Then I read A Minor Inconvenience by Emmy J. Holland. This is technically the second book in a series, but they are standalones. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. Lennon Yarrow buys a fixer-upper that she plans to turn into a bed and breakfast. This is something that she has been wanting to do forever. She's a bit in over her head though with all the work that needs to be done. Noah Ashwood has been trying to have an opportunity to talk with Lennon after he ruined a date of hers for good reason, but still, she doesn't want anything to do with him. So Noah decides that he will become a home renovations expert, so he will have an excuse to talk to her. Noah doesn't do committed relationships, but as they spend more time together, the attraction definitely grows, and they decide to have one fling, get it out of their system, and then another, until true feelings definitely start to creep up. This book was so fun. I loved the premise of Lennon fulfilling her dream and opening up this bed and breakfast and fixing it up, and the various predicaments they get themselves into as they're fixing it up were quite comical. The enemies to lovers relationship, as well as fixing it up together, definitely leads to excellent banter. The characters were great. I don't usually love characters who have sworn off love, but Noah was so sweet, and even though he said that, he clearly cared so much for Lennon. Talk about acts of service love language. Add in the side characters. There was a nice found family also. As I mentioned, this is the second book in a standalone interconnected series. If you are looking for maximal seasonal vibes, I highly recommend reading the first book, A Bucket List Birthday, this spring summer. This is the only one that won't fit really with the season. I think it's more winter vibes, but then you'll be ready for a minor inconvenience in the fall. And lastly, Cass and Wes's story, A Bittersweet Summer, which comes out next spring. Two more. Then I read The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I'm actually not going to say anything about the synopsis or my thoughts about this one, except that it was 5 out of 5 stars, because I am doing a whole vlog, so you guys get a sneak peek that this is the book that I am doing for that vlog, and it should come out actually very, very shortly. So I go through a whole spoiler-free but still thorough plot synopsis and my thoughts in that. So stay tuned for my full thoughts about this one. And then lastly, I finished up my last holiday read in February with The Holiday Honeymoon Switch by Julia McKay. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. This follows Holly Beach and Ivy Casey, who are the best of friends. They actually look alike, and they both have like holiday adjacent names. They're very in sync. When Holly's fiance leaves her on what should have been their wedding day, along with a non-refundable honeymoon, Holly begs Ivy to kind of switch places with her, and Ivy go on this Hawaiian honeymoon, and instead Holly will go to Ivy's rented Hudson Valley cabin to binge watch holiday movies and grieve, until Holly gets there and discovers that her Airbnb host is her old high school academic rival. And Ivy goes to Hawaii, and turns out that Holly's ex-fiance is there taking that honeymoon suite with another woman. Luckily, the attractive hotel bartender saves Ivy from being homeless in Hawaii. You can probably see where both of these storylines are going. Another super cute read, perfect for the holidays. It's definitely giving the movie The Holiday vibes. The friendship between Holly and Ivy was great. They really cared about each other, and the romances that they both ended up in were so wholesome, which I think is something just kind of extra special about the holidays. I do think that they jumped into the romances fairly quickly, but again, think Hallmark movies, a holiday time. You want a feel-good holiday romance next season, I would definitely recommend picking it up. And that does it for all the books that I read in January and February. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave in the comments if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts were. And if you're not feeling super chatty, leave me the emoji with the hearts on it for romances that I read, and also just yay for actually posting a wrap-up video. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!